Hello, everybody. I have with me here in my corner Tim Kirby, our highly esteemed guest for the day, and we are going to be talking about his project that is called the American Village in Russia. So, Tim, for those who do not know who you are, could you please introduce yourself?
Well, before I introduce myself, I'd like to apologize that I'm on telephone today. There was a huge storm in Moscow and it knocked out the internet, so I'm on 4G on a telephone, so I apologize for the lack of audio quality and if there's a horrible echo. It's very frustrating when you have a professional sound studio to not be able to use it, so a minor tragedy. But the show must go on, as they say. About me, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, in the United States. Things didn't go quite as maybe I had planned in life, and since all my ancestors came from somewhere within the borders of the Russian Empire, the 1914 borders, I decided to give life kind of a try back in the motherland, and so I left in 2006, and then here I am. So, and I'm the author of the project called The American Village, which is an attempt to build a community for English speakers, especially Orthodox Christians, outside of Moscow, pretty far south of the city, but still in the region. The problem is Moscow the city and Moscow the state are two separate entities, so it's in Moscow like the state, the region.
Okay. So you moved in 2006 to Russia, and right now you are you work on a radio. Is it right? You work on a radio show. Is that what you're doing?
Well, I did for a lot of years. I did the Morning Zoo on Lighthouse Radio here, and that was kind of cool. But it really killed my health. But that definitely sort of helped my status. But what I do is I have sort of two major projects. I do a lot of political stuff, which is if you look for Tim Kirby Russia, in fact, it should say under my name something like Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore. That's my Telegram channel. And Tim Kirby Russia, if you look for it on Rumble, BitChute, or YouTube. Well, on YouTube, it's Tim Kirby Russia Reloaded, because our friends at YouTube took my first channel away for mysterious reasons that I could never get it back. Very frustrating. A lot of subscribers down the toilet, but that's what happens when you have a minority position. Minority compared to the mainstream of YouTube. So anyways, that's kind of what I do. A lot of YouTubing, videos, podcasting, this, that, and the other. I do a lot of voice acting work, so if you hear some awful orcs or other monsters that have a similar voice to my own, that's me. Or if you watch a lot of videos about MMA, I am the voice of the sort of documentary series about the MMA. So, I do a lot of stuff. Oh, I'm also, I always forget, the thing I'm probably the most proud of is pro-American football player here. I'm, despite the fact I'm really old, I'm a reserve player on the offensive line for the best team in the country. That is probably my crowning achievement of my life. That was really my dream when I was a child, to play in the big leagues, and here I can. Problem is I'm a little bit too old to enjoy it. The legs don't move like they used to, and So sort of my escape from the world of the internet is by blocking. Block, block, block all day long.
Did you play in college? Or?
No. Unfortunately, this is something, if you have a religious channel, that I guess we could get into is, I'll tell you one thing, man, at my high school, the world of boys sports was very pedophilic, if that's a word, and very, very queer. I basically had to quit. This is essentially LGBT ruined my sort of sports career. I could have never made it to the NFL. I don't have good ligaments. My ligaments were trashed when I was in my 20s, so that was never going to happen. But I could have definitely played college ball, especially now that I'm this old. You know what I mean? I'm out there going against guys who are 280 who are in their 20s, and I can stop them most of the time. You know what I mean? I could have definitely played college ball. But anyways, the thing is it kind of was this thing where, like, the coach of the wrestling team, I know it's a different sport, but the guy really gave off these pedophile vibes. And there was a lot of this, like, let's give each other massages before practice. And, the sort of locker room horseplay that actually was more like the intro session to gay sex. And you eventually get into this sort of logic where you're either sort of the because I know you can't say this word if you're on YouTube, the forced sexual contact victim or the forced sexual contact victimizer. And I'm not going to do either of this shit. I'm out, man. And that's what really killed my career in American football. Is I just kind of walked away from everything.
Huh. I wouldn't have really expected that in football. But anyhow.
Well, dude, remember there was that Penn State scandal that was like maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where the coaches were like systematically doing stuff with some of the boys that were going to be on the team. So like not really the players, but like I think high school aged boys who were interested. I don't remember the details of that. That's something where people should look that up. Maybe Penn State pedophile scandal, I think would be the proper thing to look it up. So it's not the only time, but right. Yeah, man, it was a real uncomfortable environment, unfortunately.
Yeah, now that we're on the subject, I guess we have this movie out called The Sound of Freedom in the States right now. It's about this pedophile thing. And, a normal person, you haven't heard of that?
I just heard of it today. Okay. Yeah. One of my sort of Russian super fans was like, Tim, you've got to talk to people about this movie. I'm like, what movie? I don't watch movies. And he was sort of talking about it. But anyways, you tell me about it because I don't know anything.
Well, we're going to go this Friday, me and some guys from my parish here. But I guess it's about some guy who worked taking down pedophile rings. And, a normal person who doesn't know, myself, for example, this is so weird and so out there and so strange. It's like kind of hard to even comprehend that there's people out there like this, that do.
That's one of the things why a lot of victimization of people happens. I mean, if you go back to say your grandfather or your great grandfather's day. A lot of the reasons that back then certain things were able to gotten away with was because people really did discuss these things and people didn't think about it at all, So that's what our rainbow-haired friends might call the necessity to raise awareness. There might be some positives of living in the 21st century there, but yeah.
That makes sense. So you work in media, but when you first got to Russia, what were you doing when you first got there? What was your work initially?
To be honest, I just kind of came here with a couple $100 in my pocket and a program to study at Moscow State for 6 months. But instead of studying, for the most part, I just looked for a job, and I got really, 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 really lucky, and I got one. But this was back in the olden days, before all the laws were introduced to make it difficult to hire foreign people, especially Western foreigners. You can hire people from Tajikistan to work on dangerous construction sites and make them vanish if they get hurt. You can still do that, but it's really difficult to hire Western foreign people because people always sort of talk to me now and they're like, Tim, it's going to be awesome. I'll just move to Russia and I'll find this job and they'll give me a work visa. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Maybe technically that exists as an option to move to Russia, but practically it doesn't. But back then you could. And so I worked at a company that makes video games that got sort of bought out by another company that got bought out by another company. And long story short, I believe VK and the entire group around VK actually owns all that now. So, it was okay. Definitely not the best salary in the world, but it was the nicest office environment you could imagine. It was very dominated by guys. It was a very comfortable environment if you're a guy. And the women who worked there sort of also dug that vibe, that it was sort of this guy time environment. They kind of liked that. So it was a real nice office. In fact, lots of fun, to be honest. Definitely couldn't say that going to work for 8 hours a day in an office. So it was definitely low stress. So.
And so how did you go from that to working in the media and having YouTube channels and that kind of stuff?
Well, I know a few things, and I kind of understand the Russian sense of humor. And so I kind of took the fact that I have a very thick accent, especially back then, and I kind of know what Russians find funny. And so I started to do a lot of YouTube videos, some sort of tourism videos in English, because I kind of wanted to show people the realities of Russia versus the way the media portrays it. But the thing that really caught on was making videos in Russian about some certain spicy topics that Russians would get excited about. Now, this goes back to like the birth of YouTube, which I think was 2007. So you're talking about videos in like 2008, 2009, back when YouTube was a fair platform and anyone with interesting opinions and a camera could become successful before the algorithm started to crush everything that YouTube doesn't like. So I got lucky, and like we were talking about before this interview, I used to like I had this channel and I would get hundreds of thousands of views, but everyone would steal my videos, properly hype them, and they'd get millions of views on this stuff. So that basically gave me this sort of like wave of hype. And that's when I was able to make the jump to actually working at RT and then working on the radio and all this other stuff where I had more like sort of official work. And that's when I, for the first time in my own personal life, I joined our good friend, the middle class.
Yeah, that's a problem with a lot of people. They're good at creating. They're artists, like artisans. They can create a good product, but selling it is a whole nother thing. You almost need a partner to help you, you know.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there. The longer I live, the more I see the necessity that you kind of have to sort of work with people who can sort of complement your skills, because no one can do it all. It's kind of the classic, like, this is already cliche, but you have your Steve Jobs and your Steve Wozniak, or Wozniak, as he'd be in Russian, Eastern European name. But anyways, Mr. Wozniak was the guy who would actually really make the Apple hardware. He was the genius of the hardware, and Steve Jobs was the genius of the sale as being the front man. So I'm much more the Steve Jobs kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like the people we film tourism and travel videos with. I mean, I can use a camera, but I don't get like pumped about the camera technology or like getting the perfect. I don't know. I kind of like making big ideas and all this. And like with this American Village here, although I do a lot of sort of the bureaucracy stuff myself, which is mind-numbing. But worth it. My key partner in this is the top immigration lawyer in the country, Timur Beslangurov. And he deals with a lot of the more bureaucratic stuff and looking over contracts. Because like one thing is I used to hide it, but I can't anymore. I'm pretty dyslexic. And when I start to look at like a long contract, man, if people write these contracts, they do not like to hit the enter key. You know what I mean? It's just a block of text and I can't read it. You know, so you have to find these people to compliment you. Just like we recently found this by chance, an architect got really excited about the project, and so he just drew out for a very nominal fee, still not for free, but a very nominal fee, drew out those sort of plan for the village, which I'm extremely grateful to God for putting us together. For him, you know, taking 2 or 3 work days for a pittance. I still owe him money. I basically said, hey, dude, how about you do this for the advance now? I'll pay you later. But even then, the amount of money is not that much for what it actually costs to get an architect to do that. But anyways, you know, so he's kind of really gotten into this. And you kind of need to put together a team to do a project because, you know, if it was just Timur, my friend, the lawyer, you know, he's not the guy who wants to go on camera and talk about stuff or, you know, that kind of stuff. He's a lawyer, you know, he's in the minutia, right? And so and my architect guy, he's not a foreigner. I mean, maybe he could have had this idea in his head, but he doesn't have the connections and the I'll put it this way, the connections and the trust that I do for being in the media for so many years. When you're already in the Russian media for 10 years and everyone knows who you are, it's a lot easier to be like open letter to the governor. Mr. Governor, I want to do this. You know what I mean? That's a lot easier than some rando.
Okay, so you're getting into kind of the topic here, you know, like it sounds like you actually, this must, you know, this letter you wrote, but is that what you actually did? You just wrote an open letter to the governor to get?
You know, that was just an example. This has been an extremely long process. People don't know that's taken already 2 years of my life just to get to where we are right now. And we're probably going to actually get started on construction in spring. But there's still plenty of opportunities for this project to explode, crash, and burn. So I try not to count my chickens before they're hatched. Because one thing that people don't understand is they don't really understand how, I guess you'd want to call it business works maybe, or government, or doing any sort of major project. One of the things about a major project is no matter how good of an idea you may have, no one is going to want to. Let's just take a different project. Let's take a video game. Even if you have the best idea for a video game that's actually maybe cheap to produce, let's say you need 3 programmers, 2 artists, then you're going to hire some kind of firm to promote it. Even something that's that small, that's this like almost old school, like NES level development team. You're going to have to pay these people for probably half a year. And think about that. How much does a computer programmer want to make a month for half a year? I don't know. I think programmers in America make over like $125,000 a year. So there you go. You got like 60 plus $70,000 to $80,000 for one guy. You start thinking about it, you're already in the millions of dollars just to make a game for a mobile device that might be on the level of like a Flappy Bird or something like that. So first off, people don't understand that things are expensive. The projects are expensive. That's number one. Number two, when people get into this, they don't understand that, first off, you're going to have to find these people, make sure they're reliable. Someone's going to have to organize it. And then you're going to have to do what they call going to investors, which is something that's also very difficult. So now you have essentially probably nothing. The average middle-class American or Russian or whoever is in the middle class, so the average person or below, lower middle class or the poor, whatever you want to call them, they don't have the money to do any kind of interesting projects. They just don't. All right. So you have to go to some rich guy and be like, hey, rich guy, I want you to give me $3 million-ish dollars, and I'm going to make this game that's kind of like Flappy Bird, but it has this like extra button and this other extra feature, and it's going to blow people's minds, And so then you have to sort of beg on your knees to these rich guys for them to be able to invest in it and believe in it. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what the Village is, because I had this idea, but I don't own a giant piece of land to build a small city on. I don't have the money to build infrastructure out of my own pocket. I've paid for a lot of stuff out of pocket. Thankfully, again, we have to be thankful to the great creator, to the people around me, that they've given a lot of donations to the best of their ability via sanctions to cover some of these costs. But overall, you're essentially trying to do something big with absolutely no means. So that's how people really need to start thinking about things in terms of the world of projects and business and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So we really kind of got, I didn't even really introduce the subject properly. We're talking about today the American Village in Russia. Tim Kirby is the one who, it's his project. And this is a project where there's land in Russia that he has gotten a hold of that is going to be made available to Americans and Westerners to move to Russia. And this is free land, right? Is that correct? Free?
Well, for the participants, yeah, the land is free. The houses and the infrastructure and all that is not.
Of course.
That's one thing that Russia is pretty good about. I don't want to get too into these nuances, but the fact that I was able to get a piece of land of a significant size, there were a few pieces that I was able to kind of take a pick from, and a lot of them were kind of maybe in some ways a little bit better, but they kind of only had room for 10 houses. But with this project, I knew how much of a pain in the butt it was going to be and how hard it was going to be. And this was the one that was like literally free, but it's kind of far away, but it's kind of friggin' big, man. It's real big. And I was like, well, I think this is destiny. Let's go big or go home. So, yeah. So people who are going to participate in this don't have to worry about the cost of the land. That's covered. But putting a house on it and all that, running the electricity and this, that, and the other, again, there's no magic button to make that happen. There's one misconception that Russia is some sort of dictatorship, and people think that if the Russian government sort of approves of something, they just automatically finance it. Everything just sort of happens, and it's this magic dictatorship, and it's not. It's the similar kind of system to the West where you can't just have like the mayor of Cleveland, where I'm from, could he just randomly donate to me like a huge part of downtown that's maybe abandoned with like no oversight, no nothing? He just puts my name on it. He's like, boom, it's yours. Don't pay taxes on it, bro. I love you. I mean, that's not the way the world works, man. And so there's a lot of still like hoops and ropes and barbed wire that has to be jumped over. Even if this project is sort of technically approved. Because trust me, man, I've had projects in the multi-million-dollar range that were approved and then didn't happen.
All right. So you mentioned one of your channels, one of your YouTube channels, Tim Kirby Travel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that does the YouTube version. The old name of it, which was Russia Tips, Tricks, and Travel, is the title for Rumble, because they took my YouTube channel away from me because it was associated with Russia Beyond at the time, and Russia Beyond is a sort of subsidiary of RT. So when the war started, they took my channel and all 20,000 subscribers away. So that's why I have very few subscribers. We kind of had to restart. However, as a blessing, I was telling them for years, we got to translate these videos. Got to translate them. I'm way more popular in Russia. And we did. And so the Russian translated version of this is up to something like, I forgot I don't have internet. It's up to something like 84,000 subscribers, which is mental. Absolutely mental. I can't believe it.
Nice. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm ironically waiting to get that silver button sent here during sanctions. So they're going to send it. It's just going to keep coming back to California or wherever they store the stupid buttons. The silver buttons for YouTube. So
I like I watched a couple of these videos on the travel, and it's really you give them, what you're doing. It sounds like it's like a professional, like something you would see on cable, or something. It's like a pretty well done videos there.
Oh yeah. Hey, that's all the guys around me, man. That's that's why I try to mention in the videos very often, even though I'm mostly making fun of them, but this is a sort of a jocular bro humor, making fun of them, my producers, Misha and Yulia, because they're really the people that are sort of responsible for why everything looks so super professional. That's all them, not so much me. I'm more the guy who's sort of translating the logic of this from this like Russian way of looking at things to the Western way of looking at things. Sometimes I'm literally translating, and I'm, of course, the host, the guy who's on camera, kind of that. But without them, things would look very what's the term for that? Oh boy, pedestrian. I don't know what you want to call it.
Okay. So I'm gonna show a clip from one of your Tim Kirby travel videos, and this clip is going to show the actual land that people are going to be moving to and building their houses on.
Mm-hmm.
And let me play this clip. I'll probably play a minute or so.
Okay, friends, it's your buddy Tim, and this is a big open plot of land. Well, it's a plot of land with a special mission. I have to say, it's almost a spiritual experience being here. So, guys, for some of you who don't know, the American Villages Project, the idea behind it is to essentially take this giant plot of land that goes way beyond even those trees there, over to that tree line, and turn it into a community for about 200 families of people who are from countries where they speak English as a native language. So this place is a pretty big piece of land. Maybe not as big as it looked like on the map, but man, this is great. I can actually see what it's like. So now we're sort of headed south here with Joe. We're about to go to where the village begins from the northern perspective. And he was just remarking how pretty it is here, and it is very pretty. This is like ideal winter wonder. This is the kind of stuff that Pushkin wrote about. But then again, he would say that the sky should be blue. Whatever. I'm happy. I'm just talking about.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Your audio dropped.
Oops, I muted.
There we go.
Sorry. Yeah,
no problem.
So I just wanted to show people, obviously it's covered in snow at the time, but it's this big expanse of land where they're going to create a community.
Yeah.
Is it always, how much is it covered? How long is it covered in snow like that? Like, what are the seasons like in that area?
It kind of depends who you ask, which is part of the problem. Russians tend to be very emotional. They tend to over-exaggerate the length of winter. I would say that winter, from like a Midwestern perspective, lasts 5 or 6 months here. Russians tend to complain and think it lasts longer, but it kind of doesn't. I don't know. Last year, things started to freeze at the beginning of November. maybe not some, maybe middle of November was the first freeze, and then winter lasted till about somewhere in May. So I don't know what's that. Yeah, it's about 6 months.
Okay.
May was real cold this year.
How did this idea? Tell me the beginning, the origin of the idea for this village.
Oh, well, that's easy. On my channel there, we went to go film the life of Father Joseph Gleason, who is, at least for now, the only American-born actively serving Eastern Orthodox priest in Russia. And I kind of got to know him. We went up to film his life in the Yaroslavskaya region, which is like the state north of the Moscow region. And so anyways, we were in his kitchen and we were talking, and he kept, mentioning about how many people asking about moving to Russia. And he's just like, there's no solution, man. Everyone wants to live here, and there's just no like bureaucratic mechanics to make it happen. I'm like the same thing, man. I've been telling people for the last 10 years the same thing, this, and the other. And through this conversation, this idea was sort of our mutual creation. And in fact, Father Gleason has, as of now, had more success than I have in sort of building a more homestead spirit kind of community in the Yaroslavskaya region. Up there, sort of one at a time, kind of having people come over on tourist visas, kind of getting them set up, getting them going to church, introducing them to some of the church fathers. The church fathers then kind of take them and sort of introduce them to the government, and then they eventually kind of meet the governor and prove that they're really there, and then maybe with the government's blessing, he might sign something that will allow them to live there. It is quite the nightmare process. Very organic, very somewhat medieval. That you're having to sort of get the blessing of the church and the Lord of the land in order to live there, rather than a sort of bureaucratic mechanical process, which is interesting and also very Russian. But that is not the way to get hundreds of people to move here. And when you've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people tell me that they're suffering, that they're scared for the future, especially those people that have children, that's very, very much, and to my great sadness, it looks like it's time for the land of immigrants to maybe immigrate back to where they came from, to an extent.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
And you are, so you're kind of fast tracking it. I understand. You're making, by people who get on this list that you have and are signed up, it's going to be easier to do visas and become citizens and all that process, right? Is that correct?
Correct. That's one of the promises that I have in writing, that who knows if they'll actually fulfill it, but I think they will because they have it in writing. And it was signed off by the big man on high. Let's hope he doesn't change governors after the election. But anyways, so that's good. So essentially, one of the prerequisites, or would it be requisite? No, it ought to be a requisite. You're already starting, I think. Anyways, my language skills are failing. One of the things you need to do in order to apply for citizenship is check a lot of boxes. And one of those boxes is having a permanent address established. And this is one thing that's very hard for Western foreigners. Like if you are, say, the son of Russian immigrants, they left, then you probably have some cousin somewhere who has some apartment. You go, yo, cuz, hook me up. The cousin goes to it used to be the police. Now you just go to these multifunctional centers and goes, hey, my cousin's going to live here with me. And you're like, boom, you get a permanent address. Not difficult to do at all. In fact, the whole process takes about an hour. Very easy. If you're from Western foreigner, you don't have that cousin with an apartment. You come here, you have to declare that you have a permanent address. You have no address. Now, someone who's listening might think, because they've used to America, where say you rent some apartment, if you rent it long enough and you have these, 3 proofs of residency, then you live there. Not in Russia. If you don't have the stamp in your passport, you don't live there, and you're not supposed to be living there. Very, very, very different and very difficult. And that's another reason for this community, because it'll allow people to get through that one very difficult sort of checkpoint. And now that the governor's given his blessing to this, at least the way it seems from what he signed off to, that, yeah, the people who will be in the community, sort of each plot of land will allow people to be registered there, as in establish a permanent address, and be allowed to sort of get around the brutal migration quotas that make it so Russia is not exactly a country of immigrants.
Okay. So there's a lot of bureaucratic stuff I'm hearing about. Like, how did you had this idea. How did you move it forward? What were the steps? How did you have it sounds like you have a working relationship with the government, it sounds like.
Well, now I do. So, you just kind of have to, dude, it's been so many steps, so many do this, do that, change this, change that, rewrite this, talk to this guy. I can't even describe it.
Oh, it's too much. Okay.
I don't want to lie to you, and I think it's very possible that I might, just because I don't even remember.
Oh, okay. Sure. All right.
But I can tell you one thing that they did is sort of during the process of this, we're at the same time I'm doing this village, sort of in parallel, wrong way. In parallel, I'm helping out with the committee at the State Duma to reevaluate immigration laws. And I think I lost you there.
No, I can.
No, I'm here.
You might have just blinked out for a second. That happens.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you see me, that's okay. So, anyways, basically, in parallel, they sort of asked. They were like, okay, well, if you guys, this like a committee on nationalities, really think the Western foreign people want to move here, then you're going to have to prove it to us. That's the State Duma. And the proof was, we want to see 100 passports of people from the West who want to move to Russia. Just myself, I have multiple hundreds. The other people in this working committee also know hundreds of people. That was like nothing. But it also shows you the delusion that in some ways the Russian government thinks that no one wants to live here or would never want to live here. So in a lot of ways, this has been a sort of battle of me through being a part of through these committee hearings and other events, trying to sort of convince Russian society that people actually want to live here. You know what I mean? That's a whole part of this, which is another thing where Russians, because they hate themselves, they hate their country, unfortunately, they always ask me, why would you live in such a terrible country? Well, in America, no one ever asked me to be on the Senate Committee for Foreign Relations, did they? You know what I mean? Whereas apparently here, I'm already in the fancy suit, and I get to be part of a committee, and it's amazing. That's definitely, I think, a feather in my cap for being basically a homeless person from Ohio.
Okay, so if I am, let's say I want to get signed up, like, what do I do?
People just send me their passports. If they really are urgently in the need to move to Russia, then, okay, so here's the hard part. If you send me just to do the village, if you send me a copy of your passport, and it also helps to have contact information, kind of a resume about yourself, you go in a big list. When the project starts, say someone is like, Tim, I'm moving to Russia right now. This is great. As long as they can come to Russia and at least put down the money on a foundation for their house or something, essentially that means that they go from being just someone on the list to someone who's in the village. Okay? They kind of show me that they have the resources, that they're all set up. We're going to actually try to get one construction firm to do all this. However, because I believe in freedom, some people might want to use a private contractor. I really don't recommend that. I think that's a terrible idea, but freedom. Sometimes we allow people to do things that we consider terrible ideas in a free country. But anyways, as soon as they either get our person who's going to build it to actually start building it, or if we're able to somehow get investment to have some houses built and they start to buy it or pay it off, I should say, like a mortgage, as soon as they start that process, basically then they get the land, put in their name, and bada bing, bada boom. Why do we need a list then? Well, because first off, I need to prove to the government that people actually want to do this. That's part of the reason, the main reason. And then now it's because there's sort of a pecking order. Like, if someone was person number 20 and person number 67 are in a fight for a particular plot of land, person number 20 wins.
Okay.
Because they came first. You know what I mean? So even though the village is technically full multiple times over, there's no guarantee that the people who say they want to desperately move to Russia are going to actually move here. Because unfortunately, not everyone has the testosterone gusto to really just radically change their lives. I think some people are sort of in this fantasy idea of living in Russia, not in the reality of living in it quite yet. But many of them are. And so even person number 430, if, when the project starts, if they, or say, I got the money, I'm going to do this, well, and no one else wants to start, well, then they win. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a guaranteed fairness because it could turn out really, really ugly if there wasn't such a sort of a tiebreaker mechanism between people, especially when the village starts to get full. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. The other side of this is later on, again, with this whole show the state Duma that 100 people want to move here. So their reaction to that was, oh, you guys were able to do what we thought would take you months within a day. Interesting. Okay. Now, if you basically, what I was told was, hey, whoever you want to send people, basically send people down the line to us who are committed to moving to Russia within the next 6 months. And if they're having some kind of problems or they just want to live here, and the ultimate problem is they're not allowed to immigrate here. So that's the problem that everyone has. But anyways, these people who really want to be here within the next 6 months can all get sort of funneled down the line to getting some assistance. However, it's a slow process. Like the first batch of people that I sent over, which was over a month ago, just as of 2 or 3 days ago, the first person actually got contacted and they started to work out their case and problem. So it is a real slow process. Very, very different from the way that bureaucracy works in America.
Okay, so to get on the list, we get in contact with you and we send you a passport and a resume or some sort of letter.
Basically, yeah.
How do we? So are you taking these kind of applications?
Yeah, but one thing is only over Telegram. Only over Telegram. My Telegram is Tim Kirby Russia, written as one word. There are a lot of fake me's, man. A lot of fakes out there that use my icon and all that. So you got to make sure you got the right guy. But yeah, everything goes over Telegram. I really don't like to respond because I put the email address that's linked to my YouTube channel. But boy, was that a mistake. Email is a nightmare. I don't like to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, only Telegram.
Okay. So I have put Tim Kirby Russia. I think it was Tim Kirby Hardcore. Is that your channel? I think I put that in the description.
Channel. Yeah, that's the channel. The channel's of course different, and I also wanted the channel to be slightly different from my username. So,
okay. So he just if you're watching and you want to get on this list, he just said Tim Kirby. It's Tim Kirby Russia. Is that what you said?
That is my personal account. The channel is Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore. Why Hardcore? Because I actually at first wanted to do a channel that's more kind of fun stuff from Russia, and then the serious political stuff. But to be honest, it kind of didn't work. And so I just have everything in one big mess of memes and political stuff and little American football. And this project is all sort of there. I've been told that but there's actually an official group that is called, I don't think it's going to come up without internet. But let me see if it'll come up even without the internet on my big screen here. The official group for the village itself, which is different. Is it going to load? No, it's not.
I think
Amazing.
I put that one in the description.
Yeah, but I have been told there are a lot of fake groups. So yeah, it's American villages in Russia. Serpukhov. The problem is Serpukhov is the way it's pronounced, but it's written Serpukhov in English. So I kind of put both spellings there, the more phonetical one and the more Wikipedia one, so that's in there. I also thought it would make the thing kind of stand out a little bit. So
okay. Well, I hope I put the correct Telegram groups in the description. Maybe you can check for me at the end, but
yeah, I'll have to get my phone back in my hands, man.
Yeah.
Again, sorry.
You don't have to do it now, but maybe afterwards, if there's a error, we can correct it. But okay, so that's how we get in contact with you if we want to be part of this project. He just said you just told him how to contact him. You send him your passport and you get the process rolling. Here's a question: What are the 3 most common questions that you get regarding this moving to Russia and all this?
Oh, that's a great question. That's actually one of my favorite questions I actually ask to other people. So it's kind of bad where I didn't really think about the answer to that. But I think one of the main things is one of the main questions is about how do I basically how much is this all going to cost? Well, the problem is that keeps changing. Airplane tickets go up and down. How long it might take someone to go from perhaps renting a place to live versus they're getting their home built, because we're not even really sure here, depending on whether we can actually get investors to build all this. It'd be amazing to have everything built and then people sort of move in, do a mortgage, pay it off the good old-fashioned way and live where they want to live. Well, that'd be awesome, but it might actually be a more slow process of sort of building one home after another home after another home. They might have to rent something somewhere. The cost of the homes, goes this way and that way. The wars and the COVID and the war made the cost of homes become way more expensive. I did a video series that you could find only on Rumble called "This Old Russian House," and it was about remodeling the junker house that I bought in the woods in Chekhov that I call Fort Kirby. Essentially, I bought that for like 1 million rubles, and people write me very often to watch that, and they're like, "Where can I find a home around Moscow for 1 million rubles?" That's like $15,000, or even less now that the ruble has slipped to the dollar. It's probably 12,000 or something. Wow, where can I find a house like that? Nowhere. That's done. Those days are gone. You can't even find a house like the one I bought for 2 million. COVID changed everything. It really created this major real estate market shift where Russians now want to live in houses more than they ever have since the end of communism. So everything's kind of got more expensive, and I can't quote anyone on a price. And this is one of the reasons why people always get angry, because they're used to a sort of more Western approach to doing things, which would be, we have a real estate development. We have price X. You either buy it or you don't. Whereas it's more like, we have a real estate concept and we're not really sure how much. And the other fun thing about Russia is, like even our chief architect he's like, you know what? When wood goes down, we should just buy a ton of wood and put it in a big barn for everyone. And then we get done on construction. So because my architect actually bought the wood for his house years before construction because wood was on a downswing. So he just wanted to buy it in advance. So you're dealing with a completely different logic of how everything is. And so everyone wants this like nice information packet that is going to guarantee everything. And I can't guarantee everything because everything changes. The amount of homes in the village has changed depending on the construction company. When we're actually going to get started has changed. And it's changed multiple times. So so that's another question. So it's how much is this going to cost? I would say that the other thing, maybe thing number 3, which isn't so much a question, but it's usually someone makes some extremely naive statement that comes from out of nowhere about moving to Russia, where they're like, "Oh, awesome. Okay, I work in the what industry? Oh man, I'm a chef at a restaurant. Cool. While the village is being built, I'll just rent an apartment downtown, and I'm going to go work as a chef at a major restaurant." It's like, you have not been introduced to this concept of work visas and temporary residency permits and all this other milieu of this bureaucratic madness that you'd have to go through. Trying to get an employer to hire a Western foreigner as a chef instead of a Russian guy, that is a nightmare. That is a true uphill battle nightmare that no employer is going to do. Ever since they put those laws in to protect Russians, the Russians first laws, not happening, man. Not happening. So it's usually some sort of naive, overzealous simplification of things that they tell me about how they have this dream plan, which legally, bureaucratically can't happen. I would say that's number 3, but that's not a question.
Okay. I know that there is some, I had on my channel a person who's on the list, Elijah. I told you about him. When he moved to Russia, when he told this story on the stream, when he moved to Russia, he had $10,000 in cash that he strapped to himself with like duct tape or something, and he carried it with him on the plane. How are one person wanted me to ask about crypto. How did you get your money into Russia with sanctions and all this kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, that's a popular one. Now, one of the things that he probably noticed, your friend Elijah, that's the difference between Russia and the United States. They don't check you when you get out of the airport. So this is another thing where people in America have trouble understanding about Russia, is maybe on some level with some of the more like little local laws in America, this phenomenon can happen. But generally in Russia, they don't want to catch you. And no one really knows what the laws are, nor do they care. There's an expression, there's a nasty way to say this. There's a nicer way to say this. The nicer way to say this is pofigism is the word that Russians use for this. Maybe to say it in American English, it's pofigism. Is this Russian phenomenon of just no one cares about anything? And I actually think that that's one of the great reasons of why you'd want to live here, especially for people who are sort of more libertarian right-wing, is they can sort of live in a society that's accidentally kind of libertarian, because if absolutely no one cares about anything, you kind of get that kind of lifestyle. So the important thing is, I'll tell you that, yes, officially you're supposed to only bring in $10,000 worth of cash per family member when you come here, and anything more than that you're supposed to declare. But what if no one checks? And no one ever checks. That's something to think about. The next thing, I just researched this because I actually want to start offering the ability to buy gold for people, and this is something I need to get around to when I get the internet, because people didn't like the terms I offered for this. So anyways, they're going to change very soon. So if you see them on my little site there, well, all the terms for Kirby Gold are going to change. But people want me to buy gold for them, so when they come here, they already have a pile of gold waiting for them. Cool. Great. I'm happy to do that for people if they're willing to pay me. But now, ignore any terms you see anywhere written, case-by-case basis, because I'm sick of arguing with people. We'll just do case by case. You say, Tim, I want to buy 50 grams of gold. Cool. What are you going to pay me? I'll either say yes or no to that amount of money. Go forward. One of the important things you also have to understand is that gold here can be bought and sold in unlimited quantities from any major bank. So yes, so that's good. If you have citizenship. If you don't have citizenship, no precious metals for you. Yeah, that's another way to move money here. One thing that also works is crypto. Crypto does work here. The crypto community in Russia is pretty good. Although some people say Binance may fall apart one day because the regulatory agencies in the West keep attacking it. It still works fantastic in Russia, and it's a good option for me because it wasn't too hard to figure out with help. It's popular. So if you have crypto, you'll definitely be able to sell it, which is awesome. And even if the exchange itself crashes, I would really recommend that use Binance because it works, but don't hold money there. Don't hold resources there. Just blow it. Just turn it into rubles immediately. I think I have like, I don't know, $40 of Bitcoin where if I lose it, I lose it. But yeah, so that's kind of the ways to do it. There's a post on my channel where someone, through this very complicated methodology of writing to their own bank, was able to send money to certain unsanctioned banks in Russia via SWIFT if the amount of money is fairly high. So SWIFT kind of still does work, sort of, but it was very nuanced, very detailed. You might want to join up with my Tim Kirby Hardcore Russia group and try to maybe look for that, like look for the word SWIFT and try to find that post, because it was too complicated for me to recite to you right here.
Okay. Yeah, I encourage people to learn how to use crypto regardless of whether you're going to move to Russia or not. It might be useful at some point. Yeah. But that sounds like that's one of the options.
Yeah. Well, for me, it sort of depends on the user case. Like some people, they treat crypto like a stock. I treat it like a like Western Union. You know, like I said, I'm not there to try to hope that Solana gets more expensive, man. I just want to be able to transfer money here, there, or wherever, you know. So, yeah.
I mean, the guy who makes my thumbnails lives in the Philippines, and I pay him with USDT. Transfer the money. It's like less than a penny. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Do you need to know Russian before you move there?
The problem is you really can't know Russian before you move here. Most people, unless there's some sort of like language learning master or savant. There we go. Language learning savant. You won't be able to learn it because you really, at least in my opinion, for what I've seen, people have to learn languages kind of by using it. It yields like the best results. And so you kind of have to be here. However, I will say one thing where I'm going to get a little harsh here, but I have to get harsh, is especially with English-speaking foreigners, there's this real big hang-up. And people try to convince themselves out of learning the language of, oh, well, you know, I'm already 40, 50, 60 years old. I'm too old. I'll move to Russia, but I'm too old. I can't do this over again. So I'm not going to do this. And I'll live in the American village and there'll be enough people around me who speak English and things will be fine. That is a terrible, terrible attitude to have. That's one form of self-defeating, the I'm too old argument. There's the, well, I'll learn it, but I don't want to learn the grammar, which is the dumbest. It's so. Hold on, I know you have a religious podcast. Whenever I start down this line, it's hard not to swear. Hold on, got to calm down. It is so stupid. That is kind of like saying I'm going to learn how to fix a car, but without touching it. Like the grammar are the mechanics of the language, or it's like I'm going to learn how to do algebra, but without numbers. Yeah. Like the grammar is the mechanics of the language. There is no language without that. Without it's just noises. It's noises that kind of sound familiar. You kind of have to sit down and understand that everyone I know in Russia, everyone who is successful. There's one guy who I found recently who's very successful, but his Russian is bad, but he still has a decent amount. Everyone here who's successful, who's a Western foreigner, speaks Russian well. End of story. Except that one guy kind of halfway. He's kind of 5 out of 10. If you come here and you're going to do the whole true, I'm a hardcore Western expat, I'm going to live in a country and I'm not going to know the proper adjective for beer, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to be able to do anything here. You're at best going to be an English teacher. And at best you're going to be an English teacher. So that's really the only thing you'll be ever qualified to do. And that is not a whole heck of a lot of money, and that is not a great future, especially for someone like me who hates teaching. So, you know what I mean? This language thing it would really help you to try to maybe learn it. The problem is that generally all the methodology for language learning, in my personal opinion, is terrible because they think that adults should learn like babies do. And again, this is wrong. This is this I'm afraid of grammar kind of thing. And no, you're going to learn a lot faster and get a lot more excited about language when you kind of understand the structure of it.
Sure.
Okay. So here's a good example. One thing that everyone makes fun of is that, about learning Russian is the first word you learn is one that's very hard to pronounce and very long. Zdravstvuyte. Zdravstvuyte is greeting or hello. Okay. So it's very long, and it has the stvui, which is hard to say at first. You have to get used to it. Sure. But the thing that's interesting about it is in the command form. So it's sort of like if you told someone, read this book, go outside, kids. How when you put in English a verb in the first position, it becomes a command. Well, здравствуйте has the uite. Здравствовать, uite is the polite plural. So it's in the like addressing a greater audience. So it's in sort of this plural form, which we used to have in English. And it's a command. So in some ways, it's kind of like Vive la France, where it's sort of like France, live or thrive. So essentially, you're kind of going up to someone and telling them, thrive. And see, isn't that more interesting? And now you understand why is the word so long? Why is it so goofy? Because it's made of 3 parts. Zdrav is like health. It's like from the verb for like, I don't know, health yourself or something. And then the ui makes it a command, and the tie makes it an address to a larger audience. So there's that. I think that people should start with that. That's what's interesting. And that shows you, and then nothing is mysterious anymore. It's not this like, oh, it's so hard. What are all these cases? Why does everything change? Why? I hear people complain about that. It's not that hard. It's really, 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 really not that hard. You just have to kind of get in the rhythm of it and actually understand what's happening with these changes. And so many people, they just don't want to. They're just, I'm not going to, I don't want to learn the grammar, then you can't learn it. So I would say the real thing you have to do to learn Russian is get over yourself. Get over this thing. You're like I tell people. One time when I was on vacation, my dad ordered 15 tons of gravel because he needed a strong back. You know, came from America. Well, I had 3 weeks to shovel 15 tons of gravel, and I did. Slowly, one wheelbarrow at a time. And it's the same thing with learning Russian. You just go from one thing to the next thing, and don't jump the gun, and don't talk to Russians about their language. They don't know anything. Because I just did a post. Someone asked me, who's a pretty loyal, I don't know, follower, subscriber, friend, fan, whatever you want to call them, of our channel, who asked me, why is in Russian they have like different plurals after numbers? So like in English, we have one, I used cat because it's a good example. We have one cat, we have some cats, right? So we have sort of a singular and a plural. In Russian, they have the singular and the plural, but then they have a plural that follows numbers 2 through 4 and a plural that follows 5 plus, okay? It's different. It's not that hard to explain. You can see it in the post on my channel if you can find it. I think I'm going to actually make a separate language channel eventually. But anyways, especially the Russians and other people who know the language better. After this post, they all chimed in. They're getting into the whole thing because I used only male words to make it a little easier for noobs to understand the mechanics of this different plural system, which I think I did successfully. And everyone's just like, well, there's this exception, this is this. And so you have these sort of like foreigners who know the language better, who create this downer, this black shadow of, oh, well, this thing seems simple. Well, guess what? I learned this, and it's actually way harder to demotivate people. And then you have Russians come in, and they don't know anything. It's like talking to me about English. It's done. It was done. It's been done. I'll have it done, which I guess is in the future. I don't know the difference. I don't care. It's my native language. I don't need to know it.
Right.
And Russians come in, and they don't know. Again, it's so hard not to swear. I'm getting already fired up. They don't know a gosh darn thing about their own language because they don't have to because they're native speakers.
Right. So
don't listen to Russians about Russian. Maybe about pronunciation. I can't say one Russian guy said one thing that you have to do is get used to saying certain consonants in a different way. Like we say t, we breathe out. When we say t, they actually kind of breathe in or don't breathe. So they say t like duh, duh. We say t, tank. They say tank, da, da, da. And like that stuff, but it takes time. So that actually comes from Russians. They can tell you maybe about pronunciation, but about the grammar, they have no idea. Ask Russians a grammar question. They can't tell you the answer.
Right.
They don't know it. So, yeah. So sorry, that was a big diatribe, but it's something I get particularly annoyed with when people want to come here and they don't want to learn the language.
Right.
That is something that I find very offensive, especially from people who are supposedly conservative, and I'm sure don't like when people jump over the border and start working as a waitress in Texas and they don't want to speak English.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Well, you just made that language lesson interesting. I've never heard an interesting language lesson before. Like, well,
that's the problem, and a lot of the Russian language books are not so great. You should all of your viewers should look up. There's a book which I think is obsolete, but it's called English Grammar for Students of Russian. The book is very small, and it explains how English works so that you can understand how Russian works. Because when I was a kid, I grew up in a little bit of a Po neighborhood. And so words like whom, I never, what is this whom? But in Russian, whom, you have to say whom. Like there is no choice to whom it may concern. And when you understand in English what is who and what is whom, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we have a case in English. English has a case that's kind of secretly hidden, but the word whom reveals that English has this legacy case structure because it's an Indo-European language. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this got so much easier. And books like that help. Whereas your stupid Duolingo and what are these other, some kind of dumb stuff are just like, here, like repeat this meaningless word after me. Chtienie. Reading, but how do you know it's reading and not read, or it was read? Ania is the ending that's kind of like ing in English for those kind of words. So it'd be nice if someone told you, but they won't. They just want you to try to learn like a baby, but you're not a baby. You're an adult, and your adult mind works differently, but no one cares. So, yeah.
I actually studied Russian for like 5 years. It's been a while. It's been like a decade since I practiced, but I got along pretty good. Got a little, I never memorized like all the you got to memorize the case endings like for all the different cases, right? You got to memorize that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, you to be able to actually properly speak the language, you have to have it 100% memorized. But again, man, once you live here, that gets real easy.
Oh, okay. The one thing I could never do was the soft endings. I can't remember what. There's like a hard and a soft ending to the word.
Yeah. Well, that's hard for everyone who speaks English because it's very unnatural. I don't do that very well myself.
Oh.
After especially the letters L, N, and T, there's very often a soft sign.
Like
yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. You're supposed to say it almost like you're smiling, like le, nye, te. That's in theory what you're supposed to do, but I don't know. It's difficult. You'll always have an accent, but when in the written form, obviously, when you're writing the language, you absolutely have to have the soft sign where it's appropriate, or else you're writing like a baby. You know what I mean? You're like writing the word. I know how to do this, and you're writing no like no, and I know how to do this. You know what I mean? It's like that's not right. So you have to have the. Yeah.
I remember what the sound was that I couldn't get. It was the E, the like. V,
oh, that's because your teacher is probably terrible. E is a very similar to I in words where I is isolated. Like did this with, where you just have a letter I, but it's kind of surrounded by consonants. That if you do that noise and not even try, Russians will understand you. Let's see, what's a good word that has that? Перечитывать. Читывать. And say they would say like читывать, but if you say перечитывать, that's like reread something, or what's a word that has that? We would say Kyrgyzstan in English. Kyrgyzstan is the more Russian way to say it. And if you just say it like in English, Kyrgyzstan, it sounds amazing. They're like, oh my God, you do so well, because it's in English, basically. The only difference is ours is more like Theirs is a little bit more like becomes
I could never get
so similar.
No matter what, she would just my teacher was this elderly Ukrainian woman from my church. She wasn't actually a language teacher, but she would just keep saying no, you can't get it, and I never got it, no matter what.
Well, that's another part. Again, part of the problem is a lot of people, they don't know how to sort of teach foreign people. Trust me, man. If you just do it like the letter, again, that the noise that the letter I makes when it's sort of isolated between consonants, like with this bit.
Okay, gotcha.
Trust me, everyone will understand you. Everyone.
Well, if you make a language channel, I'll subscribe immediately.
I don't know, man. One of the hard problems is I got kids and all that, and unfortunately, back in my 20s, it was a lot easier to do like experimental stuff. But now I kind of, if there's no cash involved, I can't do it, unfortunately. But I do love the language. I'm pretty good at explaining it, but I'm definitely not a teacher. Like, I think teachers really need to have this like structured approach, and they kind of want to lead people down this pathway. I can explain stuff in like in an ad hoc way, but I don't know how to really write like a book about how to learn the language per se.
Okay. What was I going to say? Well, I'm going up to this comment. Let me see if I can remember. Someone says, make sure to ask Tim about choose hoy. What is this?
What?
Can you see it on the screen?
You're in the show. Sure, Tim. Chujoy. That was the radio program. Sort of one of them, but that was a sort of radio program that I first got me a little bit famous on the radio. It actually won in 2012 the Radio Mania Award for Best Political Talk Show in the country. So I was very proud of that. And then I eventually shifted over to being second microphone on the Morning Zoo. Of course, because I have a thick accent, there's no way they were ever going to have me be the first microphone. So essentially on our sort of equivalent to a slightly more friendlier, slightly less lewd Howard Stern show, I was kind of the Robin Quivers or perhaps Baba Booey, depending on how you look at things, or Jackie the Joke Man. Martling was his last name. I don't remember the other guy.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I think I'm a lot older than you are. Howard Stern was a real big thing on the radio when I was young.
I remember Howard Stern. Okay, now I remember what I was going to say. So you're doing all of this work. This is your project, your brainchild. Are you getting recompensed at all in some way? It doesn't sound like
maybe. We'll see. I hope so.
You haven't figured that angle out yet? There's no way to. I mean, it seems like you should get
in flux.
Yeah. Huh.
Remember the guy who invented Twitter just knew people would like it and they'd use it, and that someone would buy it from him eventually, maybe, and that somehow there'd be money in it. I'm doing it the same way the founder of Twitter did it. Okay. I'm just doing something I know is a massive hype project that there's going to be money involved with it on some level, and somehow, hopefully, I can, at the very least, compensate myself for all the money I've lost.
And maybe, so once let's say this project becomes successful, there's a thriving community there, will you be able to reproduce it perhaps in another location? You think?
Yes, and much faster, because we'll have already the model for this. Yeah. We'll have the whole proof of concept. Russians are extremely pessimistic, especially when it comes to anything that's sort of new or different. But once things go from new and different to being, let's copy something, they are very good at copying stuff and very quick about it. So after this first one gets going, I am very confident that I could do another one and another one and another one and another one somewhere else, because copying is at the heart of the Russian nation. It is what we do in Russia best of all, copy other people's ideas. So
okay, let's see. Here's another comment from Justin. He says Operacja V.
Operacja E was the E. Yeah, that's an old Soviet movie, comedy movie. But I don't watch movies, be they Soviet, Russian, or whatever. I'm really bad with the whole movie stuff. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah. Okay. Also, to be honest, one thing that's important if you're learning Russian, do not watch movies that are in Russian. Just don't. I think that's a horrible decision. Everyone, especially in the Soviet era, the audio quality is not that great, and everyone talks to their chest. For example, if someone were to listen to someone, who's very easy to understand, Putin. He uses a lot of words that are sort of like Greek, Latin, that we have English equivalents to. So there's a lot of like, I don't know, like sanctions, sankции, denounce, denunciatia. Like there's all these very similar kind of Euro words. He uses a lot of them. He speaks very clearly and very concisely. In fact, it's way easier to understand like Russian political speak than it is to understand, especially entertainment speak that's in movies.
I think that's called the cognate, right?
Maybe. When you start getting these language terms, if you get it wrong, people flip out, and I don't want to get into that. So right. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a cognate is when it sounds the same in English as in another language. So we've been going for quite a while here. I mean, I could keep talking. I mean, there's questions I didn't get to, but we've gone on.
Well, how about this? If you got the energy, I got another 20 minutes. I burn out after an hour and a half of any live stream. So according to the monitor, it says 1 hour, 10 minutes right now. Okay. So I can do another 20 minutes and then vanish into the darkness of Moscow.
All right. I'm going to read a scripture quote. Sometimes I like to pull up a scripture quote. And the scripture quote is Revelation 18:4. Heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." And so this is speaking to, coming out of Babylon. Why would someone want to leave America? That's kind of an obvious thing right now. Like, what is the reasons people are telling you?
Yeah.
We know, like Father Joseph, he says it was because of the rainbow phenomenon. That was why Father Joseph Gleason moved there, right? And I didn't really start coming up against this stuff. I don't live in a big city. I live in a town, so I didn't start running into this rainbow stuff very much until only really recently. Like, I'm starting to see these pronouns at work and things like that. So before, up until now, I didn't understand really what he was getting to. But is that like the main reason people are moving there, or what are the reasons people are?
One thing, do you have children?
I do not.
Well, that's the reason why you've only kind of run up against this pretty recently. Because one of the main things that people are very concerned about is they're mostly concerned about their children. It's not only just the rainbow hair cult, but the legal methodology that Russians call juvenile justice. In Russian, juvenalная justitia. So juvenile justice is essentially the policies that allow, like, the government in Scandinavia because someone called them, they go into your house, they look in your refrigerator, there's no fruit. That means you're abusing your children. Children are gone. Children are disappeared. That's called juvenile justice, okay? And those kind of policies, especially in the West, especially in Scandinavia, have been very active for a long time, man. So as soon as you have children, and you get you feel the heat, a lot of people want to leave. So that's a big part of it. That's number one. That's a big number one. The whole COVID stuff, how COVID regulations here were very soft. If in a lot of ways in the Moscow region, not Moscow the city, but the Moscow region, they were sort of non-existent. So a lot of people are kind of the whole COVID thing sort of proved to a lot of people that the government is not their friend. And it sort of confirmed maybe a lot of conspiracy theories that they had in the back of their mind. Yeah. So that's another major reason people want to do so. There seem to be a few kind of ideology warriors who are excited about the multipolar world and BRICS and all that stuff. But I would say that they're definitely the minority. I think there's only a very small minority of people who do things on a purely ideological basis. That's really what it kind of mostly boils down to. And you yourself, as a Christian, have to understand that and see around you that the West in general is very anti-Christian. We could even say that now it's gone from being sort of secular, which doesn't allow Christianity to flourish, to being anti-Christian, to now just being satanic. There you go. I think people are kind of feeling the heat that they're like, we're in Sodom and Gomorrah right now. Eventually this can't last. Even if someone is completely secular who's watching this program, right? Still, if you're looking around and you're seeing society is in a real bad state, and it's sort of, you could say that in a lot of ways, God's laws really coincide very well with the laws and logic and reasoning for society to survive. And right now, the West is going against all of that. You have to be really like, yo, baby, I'm gonna get on out of here and leave. Goodbye forever. That's definitely the mode I was in when I left. Because even when I left, I wasn't particularly a religious person. In fact, when I was in my early 20s, I was a militant atheist guy. But I could definitely see, I was like, there's a certain natural order to things, and we are going against it real hardcore, even back then.
So I've seen you cross yourself a few times. Are you now a practicing Christian?
I'm a terrible one. I try to be respectful. And of course, this kind of conversation, God's come up a few times. So I'm respectful, but I do not hold myself up as an example for other people. In fact, I'm definitely not the best. I am very like, how there's the Maslow's sort of hierarchy of needs. I think there's also should be a Maslow's sort of Christianity level and my pyramid is kind of not even half constructed there. So I got a lot of problems that I need to fix.
Oh, well, we're all work in progress. So we're talking about, is it better? I mean, life, when I talked to Elijah, he said he painted life pretty rosy. Like he says the grass is greener on the other side. Is it life and better there? I mean, how would it be?
Well, to kind of describe better, like what was his main gripe? What was his problem in the West?
It was similar to Joseph. He didn't like, he doesn't like maybe certain ethnicities of people coming into America and changing the ethnic makeup. That was one of his things. He didn't like the rainbow stuff. Those were like the two big things I would say for him.
Well, yeah. Well, the rainbow stuff is not present, and since the war started, it's now illegal. So there you go. That's gone. About people coming here, obviously, there's a lot of migrant workers and stuff, and there is some stress with that. But then again, they almost all speak Russian, and the Islam that's here is very, very similar in flavor to Orthodoxy. Like if you'll notice, in general, over Russia's, especially the history of Russia. After like mass communication was invented, right? Russia does very well dealing with the Islamic world. And in fact, to be honest, at this point, maybe in a theological sense, Islam is farther away from Orthodoxy than other forms of Christianity. Like maybe technically, if you kind of put it on a schematic chart, but the way they kind of work and kind of what people want and kind of their vision of things, Orthodoxy and Islam are almost walking hand in hand on one side of the spectrum, looking at Protestantism as like as anathema, blasphemy, both of them. So I don't have too much of a real thing. I think the people who sort of come here for the migrant laborers are less alien. There's a little bit of stress with this, but ultimately not a whole lot. So essentially, if those are his two objectives, the one objective he completed 100%. The other objective he probably completed 80% or 90%, depending who you ask. Of course, if you want to talk to what I refer to as the black pill community of people who are Western foreigners who paint a very doomy, gloomy picture of Russia, they would probably say, no, it's all a lie, that there are so many migrants and they commit crimes and all this other stuff. So I don't know, but I've kind of had the mostly 99.9% of the time I've had kind of the opposite thing. I've actually found a lot of the migrants to be very kind and nice, and it's actually kind of sad to see how blatantly exploited they are right in front of your eyes. So I guess he got what he wanted out of life, With me, I was an ethnic minority in Cleveland, and boy, did I pay the price for that on a daily basis. And one thing that was also nice was coming here where I kind of look like everybody. It is nice. I blend in as long as my mouth is closed. That was fantastic. Another thing is man, when you look like a heavy metal Viking and your only dating pool is African American ladies, you're a really lonely guy. I'll put it that way. They are not into the whole Viking, Dave Mustaine, heavy metal mystique. Unfortunately, I wish they would have been. I could have stayed in America. But you have a choice of living life without physical contact with women or with physical contact with women. And so that was another thing that was kind of a motivation to leave there. I was like the original. But I wasn't a passport bro, because the passport bro really kind of stays like an expat. So it's kind of maybe the original sort of kind of a passport bro, kind of. Maybe, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of one thing I want to get out of it. And I was also kind of flat broke and had nothing else. And my ancestors came from here. So there's also the sort of spirit of going to the motherland. I sometimes watch some YouTubers. There's this, I can't remember his name, but there's like one guy and one girl, and they're like Americans, but they went back to Africa. Like they went back to Rwanda, where their ancestors were from. It was really cool, but I can't remember. Oh no, the guy is from like the Netherlands and the girl is from America. But anyways, they're both were from Rwanda, and it's kind of interesting to see the parallels of like how they kind of come back to their ancestral homelands, much like I do. So in some ways, I actually sometimes don't quite understand why like French people want to come here, because French people, okay, they're European, but guess what? This whole racial concept, I've talked about this on my channel a bunch of times. This idea of the white race doesn't really quite exist here. And so when French people come here, they look really different from everyone, like super different, okay? So I kind of, for someone who wanted to look like everyone else, I'm always kind of weirded out by like, okay, so you came from France to here. Why? You know, you're an alien here as well. You're really on the outside of things. Like, what's up with that? So I'm kind of a little bit baffled myself. So again, you also get in this weird sort of, there's this sort of weird group of like the white nationalist movement, and they try to ironically, after especially after World War II, when a certain Aryan Empire considered Russians and all Slavs to be subhuman. Now that things here, the money's here, there's less ethnic strife here. Now all of a sudden Russians are allowed into their Aryan community. There is a sort of like white nationalist kind of cadre of people who are interested in Russia, but they're really projecting things onto Russia that aren't really here. And so if you're trying to do like the whole white ethno-state thing, no. You're going to come to a extremely heavily like mixed up society that's had all these different ethnic groups moving and swaying and ebbing and flowing over the great Eurasian landmass, and you're not going to get the experience of being in like an isolated German village where everyone lived in that village for 1,000 years. That is not the evolution of Russia really at all. So yeah, some regions of Russia are, I guess, more isolated. I can think of a few that didn't have a lot of that sort of ebb and flow, but overall it's everywhere, you know?
So I have heard that, so part of my ancestry is Armenian, which is how I get this nice black beard. I heard that Armenians would be considered black in Moscow. Is that true? Would I run into prejudice with the big black beard?
Because I don't know, not so much.
Not really.
No, I don't know. Like, again, a lot of the stuff, it doesn't really come up that much. It's not like America. It's not, you don't live here being able to cut racial tension with a knife, like in the air. It's just not how it is. So I don't know. You definitely won't have anyone asking if you're American. They'd assume you're from the Caucasus Mountains or something. But you also have to remember that the real stereotype of Armenians is that they're basically, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. But I guess we all have to tell the truth, right? The real stereotype of Armenians is that they're kind of like, oh boy. No, I can't say it. It'll get me in too much trouble. It'll get me in a lot of trouble with a lot of Armenians I know. I'll have to pass on. But it's not about that, yeah.
What is a passport bro? What is that? I'm not familiar with that term.
That is an internet phenomenon that's linked to what we would call the manosphere, where guys who sort of they've come to a point in their life in the West where they realize that they essentially can't get a woman. They can't find a woman to build a life with. Now, sometimes this is purely physical, but generally, for everyone knows, the passport bro is more about marriage, family, or especially about marriage and marriage with physical stuff. And so they are very much this sort of community of guys who tries to find the strategies of like where they should go in the world to find a wife. The Philippines is very popular. There's a lot of videos, like just put in like past destination for them. I would say that Russia is not because the whole Russian woman thing is a complete lie. They're a lot like Western women, with the exception of they aren't feminist, but they've been inundated by feminist propaganda, which is different than someone who's being inundated by the propaganda, but loves it and they believe it and they structure their life around it. They've just been sort of inundated with it. So what happens? They sort of Russian women generally hate men, pretty much universal. So in some ways, the flavor is kind of similar, but on the other side, they also understand that although they hate men, they sort of need men, and they can acknowledge that, whereas a Western feminist would be like, I don't need no man. I need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Whereas Russian women are like, yeah, I kind of do need someone, you know? So there's that. Unless they're born in Moscow or St. Petersburg. If they're born in downtown Moscow, they might as well have been born in L.A. So word to the wise. Or downtown St. Petersburg. But the other ones definitely know they're like, I want to have a husband and kids, but I also hate men with a passion. So there you go. And they also, Russian women, although they will never admit this in a rational way, they subconsciously seem to know that being in shape and being pretty yields better results in their lives. But again, they don't talk about this. They don't go at it for like the way men look at the world, where if you put a male brain in a female body, he'd be like, okay, if I'm hot, I'm going to be able to marry some super rich guy. Got to get hot. Got to do this. Set the plan. Okay, let's work on the abs and get the boob job and rock and roll. You know, that's a masculine way of thinking. Women here don't think in those ways, but they sort of subconsciously know it. So on the one hand, from Western foreigners see Russian women as being in a much better weight class and being sort of prettier and technically more cultured. They're not, and all that. And yeah, that's real nice. But like I tell guys, do you remember the movie Full Metal Jacket?
Sure.
That's one I did see. If you can't go up to a Russian woman like the sergeant does to Gomer Pyle or whatever the kid's name is and really chew them out, like, I mean, drill sergeant chew out. Again, I don't want to swear in your program, but you mother effer, you're going to eat this, that, and the other and shove this, da-da-da. If you can't do that, you can't date a woman. You're never going to be able to have a relationship here. They definitely like, I don't know what you want to call it. Like, it's not even assertiveness. It's basically I'll put it this way. You know how, again, if you go to the manosphere, they talk about SH word testing men. The women are in this constant sort of test of men to sort of see whether we're real men or not. This is, again, subconscious. It is not a conscious thing. Women are sort of always kind of checking to see if their partner, if he is who he says he is. And I think Russian women have that very strong. Like, they really want to know, like, are you really with me? Are you really the guy you make yourself out to be? Well, I'm just going to throw a bunch of emotions around. Oh, and also the other thing, too, is in Russian society, horrible behavior from women is tolerated. Like, if you're a woman, you could act completely nuts here, which is something you can maybe do it a little bit in America, but you can go absolutely bonkers nuts here, zero consequences. So that's another thing where this comes from, I think a lot of Russian women have this like fantasy where it's like, I'm going to be nuts and completely out of line, and then my knight in shining armor, he's going to rein me in and like show me who's boss and all this other stuff. And it's something like that. So unfortunately, it is very, where am I getting? Western men are taught to be kind of very soft and kind of understanding and this, that, and the other. And I'm not quite sure how well that works with everyone, but it really doesn't work with Russian women. You meet a Russian woman, and what does she see you? You are, for women who are older now, who are like more my age, they see you as a passport. Or they see you as what can they get out of you, as a Western foreigner. Okay, you've got to have money. You've got to have opportunities. They basically see you as something that's very, very exploitable, which would be fine if they were open and honest with themselves and with you about that, because that's how marriage has been since the beginning of time. Men provide, and then women provide other things, and you kind of make this family unit there, and that's what marriage was for thousands of years. But they no, again, remember, that's another thing. With Russian women also, it is extremely rare that you can find a Russian woman where you can have sort of a real like conversation about like, I want this, you want this, let's make a compromise, let's make a plan. The majority of Russian women, it's just you kind of just have to like not physically hit them, but emotionally just be like, and here comes the steamroller. I'm running you down like a drill sergeant. Unfortunately, and that's because you'll see that's how Russian men and Russian women deal with each other. A lot of screaming and yelling and fighting, and for the most part, it's very sad. So women are not a reason to move here, like they really aren't. Okay. If you really want to find like a nice, soft, compliant kind of wife person, yeah, go to the Philippines. Don't come here. You're going to be in a with rare exception, you're going to be in this eternal battle to prove that you're this alpha stud guy and smack her emotions down.
So I don't know how we got here from talking about the American Village, but that was an interesting end to a awesome. This has been an awesome interview, Tim. I thank you so much for coming.
Well, it's just good, dude. I'm scared, man, because whenever I get into the whole manosphere thing, people love me till we start talking about gender relationships. Then all of a sudden, Tim's the bad guy. All right. Well, we'll see how this one goes. We'll see. Anyways, man, it was good talking to you. Maybe is there one last question from the audience before I vanish?
I'm meaning to ask, does anyone in the audience have a question? Please feel free to drop it in the chat. And while we're waiting for that,
one last one. My throat's actually starting to go. I can feel it. It is vanishing.
One more question. And also, can you tell us like where can we follow you? Where can we find you? That kind of stuff.
Again, on Telegram, Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore is my channel. That's where you can find all my political madness. Some of it you might like, some you might find funny, some you might not. If you want to see what it's like to build a house in Russia, go to Rumble, This Old Russian House. Remember This Old House, the TV show, This Old Russian House on Rumble. You can find Tim Kirby's Travels on YouTube with my tourism stuff. And Tim Kirby Russia Reloaded is the YouTube channel that actually gets new stuff put on it that's like political. I don't know. Some of that you might like, some of you might not. So, yeah. I'm trying to get a podcast finance that's actually about relationships, because when you get to my age, I've been in I have a legion of ex-girlfriends. And so I really actually think that one important element of Russia's future development is actually solving a lot of these relationship problems, because there's a lot of divorce in Russia. And although people have way more kids here than the statistics say, a lot of people do have kids. A lot of problems, these gender dynamics, and we got to build a traditional society here. And we're not going to build it if we're going to have like a postmodernistic era attitude towards relationships, but then we're going to somehow build a traditional society. Not going to happen.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions coming up. So,
oh man.
Yeah, come on, guys. What's going on?
You praised me too soon. I told you we went into the manosphere, and now everyone hates me.
Oh, well, I did notice that. I think the viewers went down a little bit on the manosphere stuff. I used to be into that stuff. I used to read that kind of stuff, but well, anyhow, okay. So again, thank you so much, Tim Kirby. I've got those links that he mentioned in the description below, so give him a follow, watch his shows, and that's it for today. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, see ya.